What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to episode 128 of the Lombard Trucking Show. Thank you all once again for being here. Appreciate you for tuning in for last week's episode about Diet Starts Monday. I also recently wrote an article for that for TFC magazine, which is a free magazine you can find at truck stops, touching in on those mindset hacks. As always, before we get rolling, I'm in my second studio here at the gym where I've been getting after it lately, training for Ironman, raising awareness about what I call the driver health epidemic, and raising money for Wreaths Across America, which if you want to donate and get involved, go to wreathsacrossamerica.org/Lombard. Also, I've been energizing myself out there, caffeinated as always, caffeine and a little bit of nicotine as always, performance enhancing, some would say. Been fueling myself, giving some energy off the sponsor of the show, which is Super Coffee, which, by the way, if you didn't know, Super Coffee is available at Quick Trip. So if you're parking there, Casey's, shout out Midwest, and you can get it at Walmart, Kroger, HEB, in stores. But the best way you can get it for your first time purchase, use that discount code Lombard20 on Amazon and go get you some of that better for you coffee beverage option over the road. Me, when I was in college, loved mocha iced coffees from Dunkin' Donuts. Little did I know they're jammed with ungodly amounts of added sugar. Super Coffee eliminates added sugar from it. They're trying to eliminate added sugar from the American diet. Lombard is trying to change the culture of health and fitness in the trucking industry. We are aligned, and that's why they've teamed up with this show. But anyways, let's get right into the episode. This is one I've been looking forward to for quite some time because I have so many good things to say about this gentleman, and his story is beyond fantastic. When it comes to endurance, and this is a gentleman who is an endurance athlete. He's participated in, I believe, over 100 Spartan race events. He's done marathons. He's done ultras. He's getting ready right now. He's training for a 24-hour Tough Mudder as we speak. And what's crazy is he's doing that Tough Mudder on November 2nd, which is also when I am pulling the trigger early and will be going to Ironman Florida to wrap up 2024, going for the full salami and not waiting until April. That's the first time I've ever announced this live and publicly. But what's crazy is, so I was about to bring him on the show, and now he's in the midst of that hurricane going through Florida right now. So he's down in Florida. His name is Nick Klingensmith, by the way. And once he jumps back on here, I'm going to welcome him onto the show. He comes with a fantastic story that's very much tied into the logistics industry. And I think that that's what makes this so special with what he's doing and what he's doing with his company, Stride Motivation, and how he's trying to bet on himself. And while he bets on himself, he's looking to make the industry just a little bit better. But while we wait for him to get back onto the show, just a couple quick updates with what's going on this side of things. Is we are less than 2 weeks away from Waco, October 6th. We go on the horn. We go there for our 70.3, also known as the middle distance. If you download the Ironman app, you'll be able to track me on it. Race starts around 7 o'clock. So if you're interested, that's October 6th. Feel free to reach out if you want any more information. But without any further delay, after some Wi-Fi troubles and staying safe from that hurricane out there, I want to welcome this gentleman onto the show to share his powerful story, Mr. Nick Klingensmith himself. What's up?
How's it going?
What's happening, man?
We hit a power surge as soon as we started recording, and the power has come back on. The Wi-Fi has not, so I'm glad I was able to get on by my cell at least.
Awesome. So you're staying safe down there in that hurricane?
Yeah, we're on the outer edge. I mean, it's going to miss us for all intents and purposes, but it's still they just called it a Cat 3, and it's literally right outside my window, so it's going to do some stuff.
Well, good. It's as long as the walls don't start moving, I figure we can just keep sending it.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
But awesome, man. I'm glad to have you here. Just based off your website and your LinkedIn bio and everything I've read, I mean, it's like you've endured, you've endured in one lifetime what I think some, could be combined in up to 5 lifetimes with everything that you've gone through. And I don't want to tell it. It's your story to tell. So, I mean, let's just break it down. Let's start from the top. Tell us the Nick Klingensmith story, man.
All right. I will start at the top. And you know what? We're back on the internet here. So if you don't mind, I'll switch over.
Perfect. Better?
There we go. Now we got the sick backdrop.
All right. Yeah, there we go. This is where I was the whole time. So I'm originally from Massachusetts. I was actually born and raised on the island of Martha's Vineyard. And for those who don't know, it's not the rich people who grew up there, because that's why I can't go home. But I was born blue collar. Actually went to UMass Amherst for college, where I got to go have pizza at like 2 weeks ago. And right after college, I actually started my career in sales. I began working for a telecommunications company doing outside business-to-business sales in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I did that for about 5 years, where I then moved to Florida and I started my career in logistics. What's up? I started working for a small DHL reseller that was actually a franchise of a larger system at the time. And that's how I got my feet wet. The sales methodology that I had learned in telecom was just a very basic business-to-business process that I was able to take with me and kind of transfer to a different industry. And so I focused on selling value right off the bat in an industry where I honestly didn't know much about the product. So LTL was like our kind of main mode that we pushed, and truckload at the time was like a 4-letter word. So I really focused on being a salesperson throughout my career, focused on sales development, sales leadership, and ultimately developing the people that work for me. But the company that I worked for, when DHL pulled a stage, said they were going to leave the US in late 2008, we pulled a coup d'etat and became a company known as Blue Grace Logistics, where I worked at for 14 years. Now, that's the career. I mean, after Blue Grace, I left and I did some consulting for about 1.5 years. I worked for another 3PL for about 2 years. And then, as you know, now, almost a year ago, I left the industry to become a motivational speaker and a coach. Now, how I arrived there is just before I moved to Florida in 2005, I was diagnosed with cancer for the first time. The first of 4. Now, the first time I got cancer, I was scared, and it was hard to admit that I was scared, but there was just so much that it's cancer. There's so much that you don't know. And all I knew about cancer at the time was chemo and death. And so I didn't want to talk about it. You know, I didn't want to feel afraid. I didn't want to feel like a victim. I didn't want to feel like a patient. And I have a process for processing things, and it usually goes anywhere from a couple hours to a couple of days where I'm either really mad or really upset. And then I get really mad, and then I kind of figure out how I'm going to pick a fight. And without knowing it, that's what happened that same night. I was standing in my bathroom in this little small apartment that I was living in Milford, Massachusetts. And I remember this. I don't know if this is how it really was, but the way that I remember it was there was like this kind of blue lighting. I felt like it was a scene from the movie Flatliners. I was just standing alone in my bathroom, and I'm standing in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw, because staring back at me was a scared little kid. And he had these puffy eyes and just red cheeks and whimpering, you know, God, why me? And I didn't like it because I just saw this little victim. And so after processing for a minute, I looked back up and I said out loud, fuck you. Took a minute till I said it again. And then I said it again and again and again. And I got louder and louder and louder until my poor neighbors were wondering what was happening next door. And I'm literally beating my chest saying, if you want me, motherfucker, come and get me. Come and take this from me. Because I knew right then and there that I didn't like feeling like a victim. And the way that I dealt with that was by picking a fight with cancer. Now, my story is thyroid cancer. And as far as cancers go, honestly, this is the one you want. All right. The prognosis is good if you catch it early. The treatment involved removing the thyroid. I got a treatment of what's called radioactive iodine, which is not radiation. It's a pill. I mean, it is radiation, but it's not the same thing. And so I had a very easy road in terms of my cancer recovery. And so as I'm going to kind of talk through the story a little bit, one of the things I realized is I didn't like to talk about cancer because I almost immediately kind of came up with the survivor's guilt. At first, it was like I just didn't want to have cancer. I didn't want to feel like a patient. I didn't want to talk about it. But as my journey with cancer continued, I didn't want to talk about it because I was still alive. So I moved to Florida in 2007, and that was actually when I was diagnosed with cancer for the second time. Now, just before then, I had a string of things happen where I had torn my shoulder playing beach volleyball. I got nerve damage as a result of that. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea and was getting fitted with a CPAP while my shoulder was in a sling and a pain pump recovering from surgery. Within 2 months of that, I started losing weight. I lost about 60 pounds in 2 months and was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic. So I had kind of a series of life just kind of pounded upon me. And so when I got cancer for the second time, I was just like, now what? I mean, it was like I was exhausted and I didn't want to talk about it because people ask questions and I didn't want to be challenged. I didn't want to think about the things that were unknown. I didn't want to face the fact that it's cancer and, you know, I might die. I don't think I wanted to feel, again, like a victim. This time was a lot simpler, though. They actually took the rest of my thyroid out, which was supposed to have happened the whole time the first time, and that's a story for another thing. I went through another treatment of radioactive iodine, and then theoretically went upon with my life. And a number of things happened in between. I lost my stepsister later that year at 25 years old. And that was, now when I was diagnosed with diabetes, I actually stopped drinking altogether. After my couple of days of sulking, I decided to own it and just take responsibility for it. And so one of the ways that I was going to control it was by not adding alcohol. And so for almost 9 months, I went completely alcohol free. And then when my sister died, I started drinking. And nothing bad happened. Blood sugar didn't get out of control. My health didn't deteriorate. And so alcohol, that is something I had been put away, had now been reintroduced to my life at a time where I was probably the most vulnerable. And nothing else happened. No other distraction happened. What I hadn't realized at this point in my life is that people had always said, oh, you're so tough because of all the things that happened to you. Man, don't believe your own press. I was resentful for all the things that happened to me. I wasn't tough. I hadn't overcome everything. I haven't overcome any of it. Instead, all I did was use it as an excuse to continue this victimhood that I had built up as a defense to these things that had happened to me. And why was that important? Because that's how I justified my behavior for the next 5 years that I spent deep into a bottle, where I spent being selfish and choosing my personal pleasures over relationships, you know, the things that I wanted, and selfishness over responsibility, over my obligations to my employer, to my friends. Alcohol became the master, and I was unaware. And I was a highly functional alcoholic. I didn't drink every day. I didn't get drunk every time I drank. Bad things didn't happen every time I got drunk either. But more and more, my decisions were based on alcohol. And more, I realized that the bad nights were outnumbering the good, until finally it came to a pass where I said, I have to give it up. Too many people are talking trash about me. That's honestly what I said to myself. So I'm going to show them, and I'm not going to drink anymore. Well, anybody who's ever actually faced addiction knows this did not work out well. But then here's what happened. I actually put the bottle down for about 4 months. I gave it up. And I'm going to tell you, it was the most miserable 4 months of my life. I white knuckled it. I tried doing this on my own. I tempted fate. I went to every happy hour. I challenged every opportunity. I threw a beer Olympics at my house. And I was still doing all of the same behaviors that I was doing before. I was being selfish. I was being self-centered. I was leading with ego and fear over the people that I was responsible for. And I was blind to all of it. In fact, it was like, oh, look at me. I'm not drinking. But it was miserable because I wanted to drink. I hated who I was. And so the best thing happened to me. I got cancer for the third time. And why was this good?
It's a tough statement. That's a tough statement. I just got to enjoy that. Like, I don't know how many times a human being has ever said, I tell you what, I had a really bad drinking problem, and the best thing to happen was I found out I got cancer for the third time. I think you may be the only human, at least in America, to say that. But like that, like a wild statement to think of.
Now it's funny because I'm going to connect the dots of why I thought it was the best thing at the time and why it ultimately became the best thing. The reason I thought it was the best thing was because it was inoperable. I still have that tumor. It's been 10 years. It's still in my neck. Now it's not inoperable, but the danger of removing it isn't worth the risk. And but at the time, all I heard was inoperable cancer. Bottoms up, because who's going to mess with the guy who has inoperable cancer? Now, I want you to think back to when I first started talking about 2005 when I got cancer and how I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't want to feel like a patient. I didn't want to feel like a victim. I didn't want people feeling sorry for me. Now, here I was in 2013, cultivating sympathy so that I could justify my drinking. So that's why I'm like, woohoo, best thing ever. But it was hard to deal with. The way that I've got by all this time, from what I even said when I threw that temper tantrum in my bathroom, was give me an enemy I can fight. Give me an objective. Give me something I understand. Telling me that, hey, you're just going to have to live with that tumor in your neck and we'll just watch it. Like, what the? No. Like, what do you mean? No. Let's go pick a fight. And so it was hard for me to understand, especially because I was full blown in my alcoholism. I was seeking things to be a victim, and that was it. That was all I needed to completely just disconnect myself from the rest of reality. And it led me to a place on July 12th in 2014, the day before I'm supposed to be a speaker at our conference. And you might have heard this story before, but that's when I got thrown out of a Vegas hotel for trying to bang a hooker in a broom closet while my girlfriend slept down the hall. Cancer led me to that moment too. And if it weren't for that moment, I would not have flown home the next day and got sober.
Now that's, I mean, what I think is actually remarkable is, I mean, your website leads with that. Like you lead with that stuff, and that pulls right from, I mean, it's in Goggins' first book about like putting who you are on a billboard and not having any fear of that anymore. Is like that's when the ultimate growth happens. Like when you lead with that, like, yep, hey, this is what I did in Vegas. This is who I am. And you're leading with that in your marketing. I mean, this is what you're telling people. And when you're able to do that, I mean, that throws a mighty punch at letting the world know, hey, this is who I am. And this is how you can get better too. But so so it went straight from that. So that was like what people would call the rock bottom. Is it, I gotta pull this apart though, only for my own personality. Was this it was Vegas. So was this an escort?
Yeah, sure. You could call it that.
Okay. So I didn't know if they had a business card. I'm curious I'm curious how that I'm curious what led up to having the conversation with this person. Did you
you know what? I'm going to be honest, because there was a lot of blacking out that night, so I can only tell you what I remember, but there were conversations at and around the downstairs bar, because I remember being there. And I remember being on my phone. I remember talking to somebody next to me. I don't remember if that's the person, but that's the best thing I could probably think of. I mean, they're always around, not like, they're always around the floor with by the slot machines and stuff like that, and looking for solo drunk idiots sitting at the bar at 4:00 in the morning by himself. So, you know what I'm saying? So like, I'm sure that you know what? There's no victim here. I am more than sure I initiated that conversation.
All right, I got you. But you got kicked out. You got the boot. You wound up on a plane back to Florida. And when you got off the plane, where'd you go from there?
Well, that same morning in Vegas, I had to wake my girlfriend up because she got thrown out too, because the room was in my name. I mean, there was nowhere for me to hide. Now, at the time, she didn't know what actually happened, and unless she's under a rock, she might now. But we had to find a new hotel, where it took us a couple different hours. And when we finally did, my head hit the pillow and I said out loud, I don't want to live this way anymore. That was different than what I had said a couple months ago. A few months before, I said, I'm not going to drink anymore. But then I kept doing all the same stupid shit. This time I said, I don't want to live this way anymore. I don't want to be a person who does this. Like, I don't want to be a person who blacks out, whose girlfriend is in bed and I'm out like doing this. And I don't want to be a person who jeopardizes his career and puts his selfishness in front of the people who have been there for him. Like, I don't want to be this person. And so when I went home, now the plane ride was rough because it's a 5-hour plane ride back from Vegas. And I've had a lot of good times in Vegas, and I was still like teetering on life and death on the way back. So I'm not lying when I tell you it was a very emotionally charged ride for me. And I think the only thing was I wasn't going to start drinking on the plane. I never got that initiation to, but it wasn't that I wanted to drink. It was that I wasn't really sure if I wanted to live through this. I felt like I was in a nightmare just because I was out of Vegas. I hadn't dealt with any of the consequences yet, let alone, I mean, did I have a job? Did I have a girlfriend? Does everybody know what happened? Like, what do I want to go back there? Do I want to live through this? Like, this was an awful nightmare. Like, and I don't remember a lot of it. That was like, that's a scary shit when it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and you have to accept that it really was you doing it though. And I'm like, man. So when I got into my car after landing, I called my dad, who's got 40 years of sobriety now. And I told him, and I don't know why this was so scary for me, because as an alcoholic, when you see someone out there alcoholically drinking and behaving, it's not a surprise to you when they tell you that they're an alcoholic. So when I called him up and I was like nervous, and I'm like, Dad, I just had my last drunk, I had this incident in Vegas, and I'm going to start a program of sobriety tomorrow. And he goes, oh, thank God, I've been saving you a seat. And that's what happened. So it got me an immediate accountability, and I made my choice. And so that was it. I started the next day. It's been 10 years. And the thing is, the stressors of all this, right? That was 2014. I still worked at one company for 4 more years, and I still spent, 7 more years in logistics. All jobs have stress related to them. I think the thing that the ultimate lack of control that every single player, and I mean every single player, has in this process could make everybody want to drink. Even from the driver to the broker, right? And I'm talking all and there's a lot of people in between those two, right? I mean, the driver the person with the truck still only has so much control over the situation. The shipper only has that much control. Like, the receiver doesn't control anything unless they're the one paying the bill, and they still don't have that much control. There's all these things. And yet there's always somebody else trying to put pressure on the uncontrollable result. Also, with so many different faces in it, it's impossible to avoid the imposter syndrome of it. And with catastrophic market events happening like left and right, and rapid shifts, and knowing that those things don't just hurt the numbers, they could mean losing your home, to a lot of people, losing your business. It's no wonder that crutch such as alcohol or other substance is so easily abused and gotten to. But I have found that I was able to, God, there's no other way to say this. By caring less about the things I can't control, I was able to actually start improving personally without the alcohol. But that's actually what it took. It took a separation of realizing that, number one, this is my job. It's not my life. Whatever happens, happens. I can only control the efforts. I can't control the outcomes.
No, I mean, that's true with everything. Once you realize, especially in the industry, and I even talked about this on Instagram yesterday, like being a driver, you learn to, like, having been a driver, when you're behind the wheel, you learn to take so much on the chin that you're not normally used to in other jobs, which still shouldn't be tolerated. And obviously the turnover reflects that in the industry with, bathrooms at shippers, receivers, how you're spoken to, where you may go, waiting at dock doors for hours, where that shouldn't be the norm. And it's what leads to high turnover. As an individual, like myself, and I talked about it yesterday, like you kind of learn to, well, it's out of my, and I used that, what was out of my control. I used that as a reason to dial more in on my fitness. Oh, I'm going to be at this receiver for 4 hours. This is how I'm going to be treated. I'm going to spend this time, I would go for my walk. I would rip out the kettlebell, do that. And as you do that, as you relinquish trying to control what you can't, you actually get control back. You gain strength from it. Like whether it's through your mind or through your muscles, like you regain strength from kind of going through that realization, self-actualization, one may call it.
I think that's a great way of putting it, because also when we are focused on controlling external things, we are not controlling those internal things. We're actively choosing to ignore the things that are within our capability of improving upon. And so, I talked to somebody yesterday who, his problem right now is that he's like, I've been so stressed, I'm getting depressed, and I stopped working out. I think it's crazy how stress is so intentional, because it tells us we don't have the ability to go use the medicine. Because exercise it's not a cliche. It's not a cliche. It doesn't solve the problem infinitely, but my God, the impact it makes on the problem. And by avoiding that exercise, because again, we used all our mental energy on something that we can't control. And now I don't have the physical energy to go do the things that are going to spark the whole system all over again. So I need to maintain that mental stamina so I can at least take the physical actions, because they will make things better. I mean, it's getting the blood flowing is not a metaphor.
No, I'm really glad you had brought that up, because that's what I used. That was my fuel. Like, a lot of people asked me when I was over the road, they were like, how were you able to work a full day and then go run 6 miles after you were done driving? Is because even despite that days, despite the traffic jam, despite maybe not parking where I wanted to park, despite that, I knew exactly. I put that in my mind as that's what I was looking forward to. I would cognitively separate what was stressing me out versus what I was looking forward to later. I'm going to get to be able to, like, no matter what, I know that once this truck is parked, the weather's good, I'm going to be able to get outside and go for a jog. I'm going to be able to get outside and do this. And after that, I'm going to feel a hell of a lot better than I did right now. And it's going to gear me up to get ready for the next day. And you know what? I'm actually going to be home in a few days. So really, it's not that bad. I couldn't think of a better way to word it, where we let stuff out of our control affect our mind. And then to the point to which where we're not going to go get the medicine that's going to help alleviate what's causing the problem in the first place. And I think that that's the separation I think people, especially in this industry, need to give themselves. Because what's crazy about logistics compared to any other industry, and this is from the driver, the broker perspective, is the entire system is set up is you giving up control. Like, as a broker, when that load is gone, you've got no control. Your hands are off. It's done. It's at the will of the gods at that point. And in the same thing when you're a driver. Like, if you're a company guy, whether you're waiting on a load or once your door hits the dock, there's no control anymore. You've driven, you've done the distance, you got there on time. Now, who knows when you're getting out? In so many ways, like, there are parts of the job you can't control, and that's how you spend a large portion of your time. And having to cope with that eventually adds up, and that's where I think people make the bad decisions that circumvent around happy hour and clocking out, going straight home, and just sitting on the couch and welling in it, getting the Sunday scaries going into the next day. It's powerful stuff. I think you might be frozen on this end. So Nick is frozen on that end. So we're going to keep rolling with it until he's able to chime back in. But we haven't even gotten to the extent of diagnosis number 4. So while he comes back, so let's recap a bit. And actually, just to go along with how he started his story, he was born on Martha's Vineyard, right? He is right. People who are from Martha's Vineyard are not full of money. A good friend of mine I went to college with, he's from Martha's Vineyard. He's actually in the Marines now. And for the most part, a lot of people who live there work blue-collar jobs. They are roofers. They are in the fishing industry. That's kind of what they do. And so, yeah, the people who live there part-time, maybe. But for the most part, the people who are actually from there, no, they come from the old school. But it looks like we got him back now. That hurricane might be having some cause and effect. but we're rolling through it. We're pushing through. Welcome back.
Speaking of things you can't control.
Yeah, we're right on cue with it.
You know, and that's, you actually said, picking right up where we left off, right? The critical thing is, you said, I know if I have time, I'll park there and I can go for a jog. It's kind of what you and I talked about before the show. Intention. When you have a plan, when you have something that you want to achieve, or, you know, for me, my workouts are planned out. Like, I know what I'm going to do. And that's important to me, because if I have to make it up in the morning, I won't do it. And so the other thing is this: I have a go-to workout. Like, let's say I'm traveling for something. So I'm going to go to, I'm flying for a conference next month, actually. For all I know, you know, I'm thinking my flight out the next day is at 12. I'm going to get up at 5 and run anyway. But for all I know, they might want to have breakfast with me at 7 o'clock or something like that. And then I got to tweak a little bit. Either way, I know that I can go for a 30 to 45-minute nice recovery run, no matter what it is, where I am. I, you know, run around a parking lot for 30 minutes if I have to. So I always have that one thing I can do. It's no different than in business too. I always have my go-to activity. So that way I don't let the excuses of inconvenience get in the way. And I know when you and I talked on the phone a couple of weeks ago, I told you I want to do this, like, couple videos on don't tell me you don't have time. Because in the time it could take you to watch this video, you could have done 10 squats.
Yeah, it's all true. Like, I think, and Nick Bear, who owns Bear Performance Nutrition, he made a video like that. The difference between finding time and making time. Like, you're never going to find any more time. It has to do with taking a diagnostic of your time and then setting aside and making it where you can you need to make the time to be able to do the things you want to do. And it's, and like, right in line with that. And I say this often to people that I coach, whether remote or the coach or members here at the gym, is that, you know, nobody in business or nobody in fitness ever hit their goals because they somehow, you know, wound up with more free time. Like, nobody, as they got older, nobody is gaining more free time back. Like, things don't ever settle down. So that's another thing people say. And like, you know, they'll be like, oh, I'll probably pick this up when things settle down. Nothing settles down. You like, that's not the right way to look at it. And that's kind of what my last episode is about. Diet starts Monday, like having this procrastination, like somehow more time is just going to open up and it's never going to calm down. People who became successful made the time when it, you know, they had to make the time. They didn't have to find it.
And you and I also, right before the show, when you talk about organization, by the sounds of it, your priorities are in order. You understand your priorities, and then you stack the things that you need to achieve for your priorities by, you know, availability and, of course, what's important to you. And that is a level of organization. And so, for example, on something, if I oversleep, it's probably my workout that gets sacrificed. You know, I might be able to make something up in the meantime, but like after that, it becomes my obligations and responsibilities for, you know, my what I'm trying to do with my job and money and so forth. And that's not like, yeah, I just want to have money, because that's a whole other thing. That's hobby. That comes after everything else. You know, we have responsibilities. And so sometimes I let that get in the way. But beyond that, I prioritize, you know, my working out and my training so much that I make sure I do it first. Because if I don't, then I might let other things get in the way. And part of that is personal protection against myself. Something like we were talking about earlier too, where I like to do it in the morning. Do you see all this?
Flickering back there.
Like a ghost story in here. I'm glad I didn't switch the internet back over.
But yeah, setting yourself up for success. That's a good thing. You had said that. So like, yeah, if you're somebody who knows that working, like going to the gym after work is just not going to happen, you're really too gassed, do it in the morning. If you're somebody who needs extra sleep in the morning, like make sure your gym or there's something on the way home. When I was starting off early on in 2018, when I was working in a warehouse, the gym I went to was, no matter what, I had to pass that gym on the way home. And I was at that warehouse. I was there from 6:30 in the morning. I left at 5. There was a 5:30 class. I lived 10 minutes away. So I had no reason not to drag my knuckles into that 5:30 class, because I drove by it no matter what. And if I drove by it, like and parked at home, I wouldn't be like, I'd be full of regret for it. But I kind of want to roll forward into what you've got going on now. But before I move on, I want to tell people, to anybody out there who is looking to get started, or if you're somebody who, because I get asked this question a lot, especially as I've been training for Ironman, it's like they ask me how I stay motivated. And, you know, it seems cliche, but it's the discipline that drives you. Motivation comes and goes. It's like a cruel mistress. But one thing you can do, something that you do and something that I have done, is by always having something on your calendar, giving yourself something to look forward to. I tell people often, like, I was signed up for my second marathon before I ran my first. So I had already signed up for it. So that way, you know, once I got to the finish line in February 2022, guess what? I had another one that was coming up right behind it 3 months on the back end. Olympians have to deal with this too. When the Olympics are over, especially sports that don't get clout, track and field, swimming, when the Olympics are over, they have the blues. What keeps Katie Ledecky going back? You know, there's 4-year gaps between that stuff. And so get something on your calendar. Could be a 5K, could be anything.
And, you know, me, I like setting really big goals. And I know that scares a lot of people, and they're like, oh, no, I'll lose interest. But that's because they fail to break it down. You know, that race, Killington, that I obviously just failed at, I'm training for it already. And I'm probably not even going to get to do it next year for logistics. So I'm looking at an event that is massive 2 years from now. How do you do that? Well, what do I need to do today to make sure I'm in the best condition for that? I need to make sure I'm drinking my water. I need to make sure I hit my workout today. I need to make sure I focus on my diet today. I need to make sure I focus on my rest today. I need to make sure I focus on my job today. Oh, basic habits that make me a better me anyway, because that's ultimately what it boils down to. Big goals are scary to people because they require change, and they don't want to make the change. We want to see the change, but we don't want to make the change. You know, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier about how to reduce that anxiety and stress on yourself, you actually need to disconnect yourself from the outcome and focus on the effort. But yet, what happens when you focus on the outcome instead of the effort altogether? We just stay stagnant.
Yeah, you'll never get the outcome in the first place. Bingo.
I know it's so easy, cliche to say focus on the process, but that's ultimately what I've come to learn. You know, you start to ask about what I'm doing now, and I mean, that's what the new book is about. That's what Selling Inspired is about. It's not a sales book. To be honest, you could take the word sales out of there and it would apply for anybody. It's just about building that mental endurance for the long haul. And so much of it has to do with letting go of the past, letting go of the old attitudes and behaviors that no longer serve us, you know, focusing on new, positive, purpose-driven, really big, giant goals that will, I dare say, force us to be the person that we're capable of becoming. You know, and that's where I find so much of that. You know, the whole thing about motivation, people motivation. Why are you training? Because of the try. So that part's easy, right? And it just boils down and focus on executing the schedule. I haven't been motivated at 4 o'clock in the morning in my life. Right? Like, that sucks. But I have something that I planned on doing. And I break the steps down so ridiculous that I don't have anything to think about. Like you said, setting yourself up for success. The first several steps that I take every single morning are going to be this. Next.
I think we lost him for a little bit there. I think he was breaking up. We'll check back in with him. So, I mean, good key takeaways right there with what he's got going on. I know we're live here, and I want to appreciate you, the live viewers, for coming in. He is in the midst of a hurricane right now, which is pretty on brand for this show and for his show as well. Let's see if I can bring him back up here in a minute. But powerful story, nonetheless, of what he's talking about. And by getting something on the calendar, do it now. Like if you're thinking about it, just do it. You just have to, you got to burn the ships type mentality. See, we're back.
Hey, sorry. I'm going to see if my other internet. No, actually, the lights haven't come back on, so I guess I have no power altogether. Great.
Hey man,
This is
this is
about
very on brand for the show, though.
all about overcoming how we deal with adversity, right? And another thing that we hadn't talked about was expectations. So when you put undue expectations on circumstances beyond your control, it'll not only increase the stress and anxiety of it, but it'll also create a mind barrier for starting it in the first place.
Well put. It's actually pretty genius segue given the lost power. But yeah, so I mean, you started going into the book. So I mean, you're on this comeback story. You're rising up from this event in Las Vegas. You're betting on yourself. You have your own company now. Like you've left the logistics industry. Well, you haven't really left because like the same way I'll never leave either. You're keeping yourself. Yeah, like that. They can't get it out of your system. You've developed Stride Motivation. You're aiming to become a motivational speaker. What made you want to write a book? What did that process look like? And we're still diagnosis that came your way.
So what was the last question? Was it about the fourth one?
You also had a fourth diagnosis come your way.
So let me start there because the fourth time was different than the others. It was caught by a massage therapist who felt a bump in the back of my head. She was like, "Hey, what's that?" Now, something I hadn't mentioned about the other times I got cancer, but every time I got diagnosed, including the first time, I knew it before they told me. Call it intuition, call it a good guess. I don't know. But either way, as soon as she said that, I knew they were going to find cancer. And it was a different cancer. It wasn't thyroid again this time, but it also wasn't invasive, or at least wasn't aggressive. But we took the tumor out of the back of my head, and the couple weeks leading up to it, though, was I needed this. And here's why. Because even though all this times, everything else had been going on, I was 2 years sober now. This is the first time I really had to deal with this sober. And so all the feelings that I had not experienced before just came like rushing in all the time. And I was really feeling sorry for myself. And even though I was 2 years sober, I was still playing the victim. And I created this narrative because I kept asking this one question over and over again. And I kept saying, you can only get cancer so many times and not die. And this time they took it out and that was it. There wasn't even a radioactive iodine. The follow-up was almost nothing. All right. And it was such a slap in the face because I said, oh my God, I just spent 3 weeks like having my own funeral for nothing. And then I'm like, I asked myself the question this is the question I asked myself that was really uncomfortable. And I said, what if they told me, hey, we didn't get it, you're going to die? And you were right all along. How do you feel about just wasting those 3 weeks feeling sorry for yourself? Even if you were right. Why? What a waste of fucking time. And so I didn't realize how stuck I was. And this is what happened. About 3 weeks after that, my boss walks in my office. This is while I was at Blue Race, and he says, Nick, I want to do a Spartan race, and you're going to do it with me. And I looked at him, and I'm like, no. Like, fuck no. Like, that sounds terrible. An 8 to 10 mile trail race? I had no intention of being that uncomfortable. But I went home that night, and I reflected upon everything I just said, including how just stuck I felt because, again, how I was wasting that time. And I'm like, why was I focused on such a negative outcome? Which, by the way, no other time in any of my diagnoses that I ever gone there. But this time I did. And I'm like, it's because I don't have something else that I'm driving with anymore. Because here's where else I was in my life. I was 2 years sober. I was a VP of sales with like 100 people working for me and crushing it. My health was as good as it had been in years. My money was good. I was dating a new girl that's my now wife. I was on top of the world. And I was terrified of moving. I was stuck because I I had climbed the mountain, I found the plateau, and I didn't know we had to keep climbing. And so I said yes to the race because I just needed something. Like you and I talked about earlier, I just needed to get started. Started towards what? I wasn't sure because I knew there was still more out there for me. Surviving wasn't enough. Just being a victim of all this bullshit wasn't enough. Because why am I still alive? We are not here to be survivors. I hate that word because you can't be a survivor unless you're a victim. And we can be victim and then we can survive it. But then we have the opportunity to do something with it, to move beyond whatever it was that held us back, to transcend whatever life limitations are upon us. We don't actually have to let these things stand in our way. You know, I mentioned, and I'll keep talking about it, how I failed that race a couple of weeks ago. But at the same time, I'll say this: I'm a type 1 diabetic. I have 7 herniated discs, and I climbed a mountain 2 weeks ago. There's no limitations besides the one we set for ourselves. And that's the greatest lesson that I learned from anything that I've been through. And that's why, after I wrote the first book, Through the Fire, that's why I published it. Because somewhere, somehow, there was someone like me who felt I can't do this because, you know, I think it was when you were on the show with Trey Griggs, you said that you want people to look at you and say, I can do that too. Bro, I post my bad run times. I post my obstacle failures. I post the pictures that show my flab and not just my abs. Like, I'm not Goggins. People, I want someone off on the couch to look at me and know that I can do it too. There is nothing that I can do that somebody else can't do. And I want to be the inspiration for them to say, you know what, I can get started.
I feel the exact same way because and I mentioned this the last time I was talking to the guys in the logistics lounge. There's a lot of people in the industry who know me now as the Lombard now, Lombard 2.0, in my current state, the guy who's training for Ironman, the guy who ran marathons as a trucker. But there's still this other version of me that existed, pre-warehouse, pre-2018, that was, absolutely nothing, not, that was absolutely nothing like the person that's here today. And the thing is, there's a lot of people out there who were exactly like I was in 2017, 2018, in that defeatist kind of victimhood mindset. And that's the real right there. That's the reality and that's what's like, that's one of the biggest reasons why I appreciate, because I'm shocked at this point, like why you're not like 350,000 follower, like Instagram God, because I see other people, and especially in the fitness world, there's so many like fitness, like influencer types on there, and I see them and it's like, it seems to be who they've always been. It's almost like, some one or two could be a cancer survivor, but they've always spent their life like very fit. They talk about maybe some failures athletically, but for the most part, like, I don't know, you don't see any of them. They never drove forklifts or drove trucks, or they never, they never like did that sort of thing. Like on the internet, sometimes these people just don't, like, there's something inauthentic about them. Like, my content's fucking raw. Like it's raw. Like the captions I do, like we talked about editing, like I make it raw. Like what you see is what you get. I'm going to scream what's on my mind. But that's the thing. I want people to see real people doing stuff. It's part of the reason why I even continued the show. I was like, I need to have conversations with real people to get those conversations, so other real people and not just like fake internet people can hear this stuff, to know that, oh, maybe I can rise above.
In the beginning of the show, the way it said, like, maybe I got more than my share or something. I don't think there's anything unique about me. I really don't. Maybe, just maybe, the totality of things. But at the same time, everybody has something. Everybody's been through something, and everybody has their own frame of reference. If somebody hasn't been through a lot, then the worst they've been through probably feels the same as the worst that I've been through. So I think because of the totality of it, it just makes me more relatable and gives me that opportunity. And kind of like you were talking about, the power of sort of outing yourself or talking about your worst day or your failure, or, the who I was, or the billboard, right? I just never realized how liberating and powerful that was going to be. Not just from the sheer fact that it can't hurt me anymore, but by other people confirming that you're not alone. When I actually first started talking about fears, I never realized how much I had been driven by fear and ego in my life until I started talking about fears. And then as other people started confirming, they were like, oh yeah, no, that resonates a lot. Thank you. And I'm like, oh, I'm not alone. They're not alone. And now I've helped other people with it. So that's how ultimately, I mentioned earlier about being a victim, being a survivor. The way that we overcome is by helping others with what we've done. And
I mean,
it's just extremely liberating, powerful.
that's like the whole meaning of life right there. I mean, getting philosophical, whether people, people consider themselves of faith or not. But I mean, yeah, we weren't, like, I love that you said that, like, we weren't put here to survive. If, I've learned throughout life, like, we were put here to give back. Like, we're put here to take our life, our experiences, give it back to people, give to those in need, give to those, who aren't seeing it yet. Like, as you learn, same thing, like you said, you reached like kind of like a plateau. It's sometimes there are people who are they're at the top of that mountain, but sometimes we got to go back down to the bottom of that mountain, find some more people, and then you got to go back up that mountain with them. Like, that's exactly what it's all about.
Plus, mountains don't go straight up. They go up, down, switchbacks, up, down, around. Straight lines only exist in geometry. And also, not for nothing, that plateau, when I said I was on top of the world, I listed things. I was not my best at all because I was still scared to death. I don't even know who I was. That was 8 years ago. I don't even know that guy anymore. So that plateau would have kept me there where Nick would not have been at the peak of the mountain where he belongs. And I'm still not there. But I'm a lot further than I was. Now I'm gonna climb this next section and see what's over there.
Yeah, letting the mountain get bigger is definitely where it's at. I mean, that's kind of where I've got my head at. Like, I know, because I envision it, I see it in my mind. I'm already trying to envision that finish line in November in Florida, and I'm seeing that happen. But once I cross that finish line, like, I'm not looking to just do these events just to do them. Like, I'm looking to get to the podium. Like, I'm looking to get to, I'm looking to place in my age group. I'm looking to get more and more businesses and companies in the freight world in on this and be like, hey, maybe we should listen to this. Maybe we need to listen to this guy. Why should we listen to this guy? Like, that's the thing. Like, through doing these events, there's just a lot more things to come from it. Yeah, the idea of no finish line is big on my mind.
I love it. Definitely
But
love it.
Yeah, we're right. So yeah, what were you gonna say?
So maybe one day I'll do a triathlon. We'll see. I got
No.
plenty of and to achieve first.
We'll get you there. We keep in touch. We're gonna get you there too, and I'm gonna get back to more of some of those Tough Mudders. Those are some fun events. And with that, now look, we need to get Stride Motivation to win. There is such a huge opportunity in this industry for so many people to benefit from what you have to say through your story. You got the book. You're working on book number 2 right now.
Book number 2 came out 2 months ago. The first one was called Through the Fire, which is my origin story that we talked about. The second one that came out 2 months ago is Selling Inspired, a mental endurance guide for enduring sales performance.
Perfect. And now, where can people get those books?
Both of those books are available on Amazon. They are available in paperback and Kindle. And if anyone is interested in a signed copy, they can connect directly to me.
Awesome. So they can get the books on Amazon, and the second book just came out. What do you work? So what do you're talking about being dedicated to your work now. What are you up to now, and where can the people find you?
You can find me anywhere on the internet at Stride Motivation. The website is stridemotivation.com. I am putting out daily content on all social media channels at Stride Motivation. I am primarily looking forward to more speaking opportunities. Share my story of hope, inspiration, and some badass stories of resilience to help other people get started. And I am working with some one-on-one coaching clients. I'm looking to add a few more to the roster. And very specifically, I help people get clarity on the next phase of their life. We set very tangible objectives, and then I help them find wildly specific and stupidly simple action steps to get started.
Well, there you go. If you're somebody who's looking to get started, if you're looking for your reason to start, this is the gentleman to talk to right here. Number one, this is definitely a part one, because we're going to get you back on here soon, and we're going to talk. I'd love to get a little roundtable on here with some other people to talk about more on mental health within the industry. I think there's a lot of stuff that we can really dig deep on. But I want to thank you for coming on, brother, and sharing your story. I mean, just laying it out there on a billboard. There's a lot that I took away from this. I'm not going to lie. There's a couple moments of I had some onions in the room going. You got me. I kind of want to run through a brick wall right now.
Well, dude, this has been awesome, man. Definitely glad we could catch up today, and we'll look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, if you got a few, just hang out in the studio, and I'm going to walk this one out.
Cool.
Well, there you go, guys. That is episode 128 of the Lombard Trucking Show. Probably the most powerful story to come across, in the last 127 previous episodes. And there's a lot to take away there. If you haven't connected with Nick on LinkedIn or anywhere on social medias, I highly recommend it, especially because he doesn't gatekeep himself. He keeps himself wide open to literally anybody. And that's a problem I've been running into with trying to network people within the fitness space, at least on the internet. Here in Austin, it's been really great. The Austin fitness community is such a welcoming group of people that when they hear my story and what I'm trying to do, they're trying to find ways to help me win. Other people within the industry, at least, because there's some other people who make content in regards to like trucking fitness, who sometimes I'm in their DMs a bit, and people sometimes send me this guy's videos, and I can't get a hold of them because I'm trying to collab. Because if you want to make a change, we got to do it together. Like, great, you've earned 40,000 followers and you're making videos of yourself. But again, we just talked about giving back, like how we need to use it to help people, getting people started, as opposed to it being intimidating. So definitely reach out to Nick. But I think the best thing to leave it off with is the fact that Nick and I are both like real people with real stories. There's nothing different about me. There's nothing between you and I. If you are somebody who's early on in their fitness journey, hasn't started yet, and you think that there's a difference, or that I was born gifted, or I had some sort of natural athletic ability, it's not true. There is no difference. I say this in videos all the time. The difference between the gentleman who served in Napoleon's armies, the ones who had to march on their way to the Battle of Austerlitz, they had to march 60 some odd miles in less than 48 hours to get to Austerlitz to win, for the strategy to work. Those men, there's no difference between you. In fact, their DNA runs through you. Everybody through history's DNA runs through you. So the hard stuff they did, you're capable of it. But also at the same time, not comparing yourself to others. And we had talked about like who you present yourself at on the internet and what you strive to be. And one of the most powerful stories from Napoleon on this is, after Napoleon had been in Austria and he had came to the tomb of Frederick the Great, somebody he revered. Frederick the Great was a great leader. He paid a lot of respect to him, told all his officers in the room, take your hats off, gentlemen. If this guy was still here, we surely wouldn't be standing here right now. And when Napoleon was interviewed later, why he didn't take Frederick the Great's sword, because why not? You won. You took this guy's former land. When he was asked why he didn't take Frederick the Great's sword, he responded, because I had my own. So take that with you this week. Don't worry about what other people got. You have just enough. You have your own sword out there to get whatever it is that you're going after. But other than that, guys, I appreciate you all following along. Really, I'm hoping to get another episode out before I go to Waco. You can find me anywhere at Lombard Trucking. Follow along on the journey. You can donate to Wreaths Across America, wreathsacrossamerica.org/Lombard. But with that, guys, we're going back to the bench. Take care.